The stars burned silently in the black canvas of space, their brilliance spread across eternity like scattered sparks in an endless void. The galaxy was calm, or at least it seemed so, for hidden in the silence was a tension that pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the fabric of reality. At the center of this growing storm were two beings whose names were etched into the mythologies of countless worlds: Superman, the Last Son of Krypton, and Darkseid, the God of Tyranny. Theirs was not simply a conflict of fists or powers. It was a clash of ideals, a battle for the meaning of existence itself. For Superman, existence was a gift, a chance to build, to nurture, to protect. He believed in the possibility of goodness in every being, that no matter how scarred or broken, redemption was possible. His life was defined by restraint, not because he lacked the power to crush his enemies, but because he understood that true strength was not measured in destruction, but in the preservation of life. He represented hope, the impossible dream that a single being could rise above his limitations to inspire others to do the same. Darkseid was the antithesis of this dream. To him, existence was chaos, a disorderly sea of individual wills clashing endlessly against one another. He saw in the multiverse not beauty, but waste, fragments of power and potential scattered without meaning or purpose. His vision was the anti-life equation, the reduction of all wills into one, the annihilation of freedom in exchange for perfect order. To Darkseid, Superman's hope was a lie, a flimsy shield against the inevitability of entropy. Life was not about dreams or ideals, but about inevitability, and in his eyes, the only inevitability was the victory of control. Their paths had crossed many times before. Superman had stood against Darkseid's avatars, had battled the God of Tyranny's projections and armies, and had even struck him down when the Earth was threatened. Yet these were not the battles with Darkseid's true self. They were shadows of his will, mere fragments sent to test, to toy, to manipulate. The real Darkseid resided beyond mortal comprehension, a being who touched the source itself, existing not merely as flesh but as an idea, an eternal constant in the cosmos. The universe itself whispered of the coming clash. Darkseid had grown restless, his eyes turning once more to Earth, the jewel of mortal defiance, the world that birthed not gods but men, and yet still dared to resist his will. And at the center of this defiance stood Superman, a being who was not a god, but who often carried himself as though he were one. Darkseid saw in him the ultimate contradiction, the alien who wished to be human, the godlike who chose humility. He despised it and yet recognized its danger, for if one man's dream could rally an entire world to resist tyranny, then perhaps even Darkseid's anti-life equation might one day falter. That could not be allowed. Superman, for his part, felt the pressure building like a storm at his back. Reports from the Justice League spoke of worlds falling silently, entire civilizations erased not by conquest, but by obedience, whole star systems turned into shrines to Darkseid's will, their populations singing his praises as though their hearts had never known freedom. These were not battles fought and lost, but battles that never began, for the will of the people was already extinguished. It haunted him, the thought that Darkseid's vision could reach Earth and rob humanity of its most precious gift, the right to choose. The two figures, so different in form and belief, were inevitably drawn together. Their meeting was not an accident of fate, but a necessity of the cosmos. It would not be fought over territory, or even survival. It was a confrontation between hope and inevitability, between the dream of freedom and the decree of control. Superman pondered the weight of what lay before him. For all his battles, all his victories, he had never faced Darkseid in his truest form. Could he defeat a god not bound by mortal limits? Could he resist an enemy who was not merely flesh, but the embodiment of tyranny itself? His heart told him yes, that as long as hope lived in him, there was no darkness he could not pierce. But a quiet doubt gnawed at him. Was hope truly eternal, or was it simply the stubborn refusal to accept reality? Darkseid pondered as well, though his thoughts were not troubled. He had watched Superman for years, through victories and defeats, through sacrifice and triumph. He saw not a god, but a flawed creature clinging to illusions. To him, Superman was the perfect symbol of weakness disguised as strength, a being with infinite power, yet shackled by self-imposed morality, a warrior who could shatter worlds but chose instead to carry them. Darkseid respected his strength, even admired his resolve, but in his heart he knew such ideals could not withstand the march of inevitability. And so, the stage was set. The meeting would not be one of words alone, though words would sharpen the edge of battle. Theirs would be a war not only of might but of philosophy, a confrontation that would echo across the cosmos. Superman would enter it armed with his dream of hope, and Darkseid would enter it armed with the certainty of inevitability. Only one vision could prevail. The stars trembled, the silence of the void grew heavy, as though reality itself awaited the outcome. The clash was no longer a possibility, it was inevitable. Superman would fight with the fury of a protector who refuses to surrender his people, and Darkseid would fight with the inevitability of a god who claims dominion over all. And when the storm finally broke, the universe itself would bear witness to whether hope could defy inevitability, or whether inevitability would consume even hope. The clash began not with a whisper, but with a roar that shook the very bones of the cosmos. Superman surged forward first, a comet of blue and red streaking through the void, fists clenched with the promise of hope. Darkseid did not move. He stood with the patience of eternity, his red eyes smoldering as though he had already foreseen every strike, every outcome. Superman's first blow landed like a supernova, the impact splitting the silence of the void with a soundless quake. Galaxies in the distance trembled as space rippled under the force of his strike. Yet when the light cleared, Darkseid still stood, his body unmoved, his face unshaken, his lips curved into the faintest trace of contempt. Superman did not relent. He pressed forward with a flurry of strikes faster than light itself, each punch enough to break a mountain, each kick strong enough to crack planets. Darkseid absorbed it all, his frame staggering only slightly before his hand shot forward like inevitability made flesh. His palm caught Superman's chest, and with a surge of force beyond comprehension, he hurled the Man of Steel across the void. Superman slammed into the surface of a lifeless moon, shattering it to fragments with the impact. He rose, blood trickling from his lip, and for the first time in years, he felt the cold weight of fear pressing against his heart. But fear did not chain him, it fueled him. Superman erupted once more, his heat vision blazing like twin suns, cutting through space with a fury born of desperation. Darkseid's eyes flared in answer, his Omega beams igniting with crimson inevitability. The two beams met in the void, colliding in an explosion of energy that split dimensions, rupturing reality itself. Worlds trembled, the void screamed, and the multiverse bore the scars of their clash. Superman strained, his vision burning at full force, every cell in his body channeling the sunlight stored within him. Yet Darkseid's beams pushed relentlessly forward, their nature not merely energy, but the embodiment of inevitability. The Omega beams twisted, split, and reformed, dodging Superman's defenses before slamming into his chest. He roared in agony as the beams cut through him, searing both body and soul, tearing at the very essence of his being. Only sheer will kept him standing. Superman charged again, grappling with Darkseid in a storm of blows that shattered planets and warped space around them. His fists cracked against Darkseid's jaw, his strength bending stars, but Darkseid retaliated with the cold fury of inevitability. His strikes were slower but heavier, each one carrying not just force but the weight of inevitability itself. Superman staggered, bones fracturing, his body screaming against the punishment. Still he fought, for Earth, for Lois, for every soul that looked to him as their shield. But Darkseid was not merely a warrior, he was a god. His voice thundered in Superman's ears as they clashed. "You fight for hope, Kryptonian, but hope is a lie. Hope bends, it breaks, it fades. What endures is order. What survives is inevitability. And I am inevitability." With those words, he unleashed a wave of the Omega effect, engulfing Superman in crimson fire. Superman screamed, his body disintegrating and reforming under the torment. He resisted, pushing forward through the storm, and for a moment, it seemed hope might triumph. He drove his fist into Darkseid's chest, the blow echoing through eternity, forcing the god to stagger. The stars themselves seemed to cheer, yet in the silence that followed, Darkseid's laughter rumbled like thunder. He straightened, brushing aside the damage as though it were dust. "Even at your peak, you are but a man pretending to be a god. I am no pretender. I am." His Omega beams ignited once more, faster than thought, unavoidable, unerring. They pierced Superman's chest, ripping through flesh and spirit alike. The Man of Steel collapsed, his cape torn, his body broken. He struggled to rise, his hand pressing against the void, his eyes filled with defiance. "As long as someone believes, hope will never die," he whispered, blood staining his lips. Darkseid stepped closer, towering above him like a shadow that no light could banish. "And as long as existence endures, hope will yield to inevitability." With a final surge of the Omega effect, he erased the last son of Krypton, leaving only silence in the void. The stars wept. The multiverse trembled. Hope had fought with all its might, but inevitability had triumphed. Darkseid stood alone in the void, his eyes burning like the judgment of eternity. The dream of freedom had ended, not with a whisper, but with the crushing weight of inevitability. And thus, the universe learned a bitter truth, that even hope, bright as the sun, could not outshine the shadow of inevitability.